Well, good morning. I wanted to share with you guys how weird yesterday's exchange was. Now, every day we do an exchange. Actually, I do 3 exchanges a day. And so I start off at 7, 10, usually around 1 or 2, and then I end about 5, maybe 6, give or take. But the day before yesterday, I still was not feeling really well, and I've been battling this congestion cough that just will not go away. And so I think I hadn't been drinking as much water as I should be. So when I did my first exchange, which is actually my second exchange, sorry if it's confusing, but the very first exchange you do is you're filling up, here's my bag here, you're filling up your system with that to dwell. And then like 3 or 4 hours later, you drain that out, right? So the first exchange, I'm just filling up. The second exchange, I'm emptying that. Now, we all know that you have to get this whole thing out of your system, plus whatever extra toxins basically you need to get out and flush out, right? That's the whole thing of dialysis. That's why we do dialysis, is otherwise that stuff would just sit in your system and you can become septic and infected and so many things. That's why it's so important not to skip an exchange. So I did my first exchange and then I drained, and I was sitting here and I usually watch something, right? I'm into this movie called The Lake. Yeah, it's called The Lake. And I think it's filmed in Russia. I'm pretty sure they were speaking Russian. So you have to pay attention like by reading the captions. I don't think any of it was in English. And it's one of those movies, too, you can't switch it, where you can get it spoken in English, even though they're speaking another language. A lot of those movies I like to watch, but you have to pay attention because you have to read it, right? So I'm busy over here watching it, and it's again one of those like end of the world. There's a virus, and this two different families of two different social statuses, basically, one's poorer and one's richer, is trying to get to the lake because the lake has a terrible shelter, but at least it's a shelter. But they also have the lake, like to fish out of it, eat out of, drink out of, all that stuff, right? So it's a very good place for them to go if they're not caught. So there's just a bunch of stuff going on. So anyways, I'm busy watching that, and then my timer goes off and I'm like, oh wow, that was fast. And when I look down at my bag, it was like very little. So when you get used to doing these exchanges, you can kind of, which is weird, visually start to kind of recognize, oh, I drained a lot today, or I drained little today, and so anyhow, after that was done, I was like, that doesn't seem very full. And then I filled and disconnected all my sterile steps. And so when I use this little guy up here, because that weighs it and tells me how much is technically taken out of my system, then this bag here is 2,000 milliliters, and this registered at 1,729. I think that was it. 1729 was what that said. So that means that I didn't drain out whatever that difference is. I don't do math. So whatever the 2,000 versus the 1,795 difference is still in my system, or my body absorbed it. So that told me right away, like, dang, I must be dehydrated, and I just don't feel dehydrated. It hasn't caught up with my red flags yet. So I was like, oh my God, like that rarely happens. I think it may have happened over the last 4 years, maybe 2 times, 3 times at most. There's no need to panic. There could be a couple things, like I could have an over amount of fibrin in my system, and fibrin is what your body creates to help heal your body. And so maybe because I've been sick, it was extra fibering my body, but a lot of times what my body decides to do is just to do extra fibrin to clog up the port that I have in me, because it doesn't still understand that that's there now. It's your body wants to keep you alive and the healthiest it can, so it's still trying to get you back to where it thinks it needs to be, but I'll always have the support. So, I mean, for the most part, right? So, that's why it was kind of weird too. So I decided I might as well do some heparin, because usually I do heparin every other day. Sometimes I have to do it a couple days in a row because for whatever reason, my body's just kicked into overdrive. I don't know if that's wrong or right. Nobody's really said anything about it. They know I get heparin. They prescribe me heparin. So it's not like a mystery. So again, sometimes we have to take the education we have and the wisdom we have and logic and kind of figure out what's going on. So when you see fibrin in your tube, which sometimes you can, it looks like a white pasty boogery kind of thing, then you don't have to be alarmed. You just have to use some heparin and it breaks it down so that you can get rid of it. Because if that clogs up your port, then of course you can't do a dialysis exchange because nothing's coming out, right? So anyhow, when I did my third exchange, so I filled, I drained, it was only 1729. Then I, filled again, and then I drained, it was 28.29. 28. That means I pulled out the 2,000 I'm supposed to every time, plus 800, which is really high for an exchange, at least for me. Like, when you start doing this, you'll notice a pattern of, depending on the bag, depending on what you've eaten, those kind of things, over time, you just start to see there's patterns. And so typically a high pool for me will be a 26. So 2,000 or 200 plus 600. So it'll be 26. No, 2,000 plus the 600. Yeah, that's right. Okay, sorry, the math, it gets me. So anyways, so it was really interesting. I've pulled 27 before, and that's been like, dang, but 28, almost 29, that was wild. But nothing to be alarmed about, because at least one, what's the best part? It's getting out of your system. 2, I'm basically making up for what didn't pull out earlier for whatever reason. So I'm glad I pulled that out, because I still have to get that 2,000 out that I went before, right? When I only pulled out 1729. So whatever the difference is, I still need to pull that out too. So add that on top, and it basically balanced itself out. Then my third exchange, I think I ended up, or my last exchange, I should say, I ended up pulling out probably 25 or 26, which means I probably ate something. And then everything's good. So, you don't have to call DaVita over those kind of things, or whoever your dialysis person is, because basically it's going to level itself out and balance itself out, because it will still come out. It's just, for whatever reason, it's going to take a little time. Unless it's happening a lot, or unless you're always not getting out your 2,000, then that would be an alarm, and I don't know what they do with that. So it's not been an issue with me. I put in 2,000 comes out, plus whatever extra. And once in a while, I will get a 2,020 or 2,050. It's just weird, because it's like, oh, I didn't have hardly anything I was fully healthy and not pulling any toxins out. Sometimes that happens on that second exchange, which would be more often on that second exchange, because you've just been sleeping. So once you wake up, at least I do mine during the day. I don't do mine overnight. And that's because the times that you have to start overnight is not as flexible as during the day. The pro about it is that it's overnight, The con about it is that it's overnight. So for me, I still go clubbing. My partner is a musician, so we're at a bar or a pub or a restaurant or a gig somewhere all the time. And so my schedule itself and my personality, because I like to dance, is not one that is going to be able to do a dwell overnight. Now, I have before, and literally hardly anything came out. So I'm more successful with my exchanges during the day. And there's been a couple times I've gotten home so late, and maybe I had like a couple of beers and some bar food that wasn't the best because we're human, we do that. And so I'll do an exchange to go overnight and get in the morning, there's hardly anything coming out. So it's kind of not worth it, but sometimes I will just, just to be sure, like I'm pulling out, I'm fixing to get ready to pull those toxins out. But for my system, it's just better for me to do it during the day. Plus, it's more comfortable because sometimes at night when you're real full, it's just like you feel like you're again 9 months pregnant. You're just bloated and it's hard to sleep that way sometimes. But there have been times where I'm like, it doesn't matter, I have to do this. There have been a couple times where I did two, back when I had to do 6 exchanges a day when I was first starting out. I had to I would have a break. And so instead of having a break, I would continue forward with all my exchanges, taking a break later on and draining so I could go out and dance. And then when I got home, I would fill, and that would be my last exchange. So there's a way to manipulate them around so that you're still doing all of them and you're still being healthy and safe, but it's a little bit easier for your lifestyle. So that's hard because I've done exchanges at like 1 or 2 in the morning, and it's a little difficult. You're tired, you just want to lay down, and now you got to do this exchange. So anyways, that was my adventure the other day. So okay, I'm gonna let you go. Have a good day. I'll talk to you soon. Drink your water. Bye bye.